Alright, so I'm trying another vlog this week. And I've actually got a few books to talk about this week. I've read Amal, Unbound, which is the global read aloud novel for upper elementary and middle school. I read Malala, A Brave Girl from Pakistan, which is also, if you just flip it over, another story, Iqbal, A Brave Boy from Pakistan. And then usually I don't talk about the kind of text set books that I make, but this week I read Rainbow Weaver, which in Spanish is Tejadora del Arcoiris. And I normally don't mention the corresponding texts I use, but this one actually connected very well to both Amal, Unbound, and Malala / Iqbal. And so I'm going to talk about those a little bit this week. I have to start with Amal, Unbound. It was just so beautiful, and I just connected with Amal on so many levels, not, the most obvious ones of indentured servitude or anything, but just her wanting to be a teacher and finding a way to do that no matter what. And some of the quotes she had in here about reading just made me very happy. And so before I kind of delve into each of them, the kind of common theme I found with the books this week was change and affecting change, and how children can affect change. Like children, like our young students, they can affect change in these really powerful ways. And each of these books kind of showed that. Amal did when she stood up against that just, evil Jawad, and decided it's not okay to treat people this way, and I'm going to do something about it. And that took a lot of courage, because she knew that if things went badly, something could happen to her, something could happen to her family. And so that was just very powerful for her to do. And the whole time I was reading this book, there were kind of things that I kind of picked up on with the time period when they had cars and phones and computers and everything, but I was still kind of wondering about the exact year, because I'm like, well, she's an indentured servant pretty much. Like, yeah, it's not official, nobody went through proper channels, but it said, all right, your family owes me a debt, you're going to work it off now. And it kind of got me thinking about the time period, like, is that still going on in Pakistan, where there are indentured servants? And that's just kind of a well-known thing, and that's just, it is what it is, and no one really does anything about it. And so she just found herself in this situation that she just did not want to be in, and decided to change it. And that's so powerful, because she's 12. And I can't imagine myself doing anything like that when I was a 12-year-old. And so that was just very powerful to me, and just the whole, her teaching Fatima to read and finding ways to keep reading herself and keep her education going while educating others, that it was very, very powerful to read. So we had Amal turning in murderers essentially to the police and freeing the indentured servants from that particular location. I know that, in other villages this was probably going on with other, hopefully not as awful landlords, but probably so it wasn't, a countrywide situation, but she was still affecting change in her one area. So that kind of leads me right into Malala Iqbal. And Malala, of course, I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with, because that only happened 6 years ago, when she was shot in the head for wanting an education. And she did end up surviving. She's still alive and still speaking out for girls to be educated in Pakistan. But, she decided it's not right that they're saying that I shouldn't have an education. I want my education. And she fought for it, and was very outspoken, and someone tried to silence her for what she was saying. And then to recover from something like that, and then to keep going on, to keep being outspoken and to keep sharing, is very, very powerful. But with this book, the other side of the story, Iqbal, I had not actually heard this story before. They're both Malala and Iqbal. Iqbal was a real person. He was shot and killed, and then Malala is still a real person. So these are kind of more biographical stories. And I had not heard of Iqbal's story before, and it's very similar to Amal's. His family owed the owner of a rug factory money for something, and the rug factory owner decided, okay, well, your son's going to come work for me until it's paid off. And after reading Amal, Unbound, and seeing how that debt doesn't really go away, and if in the case of Amal, she's actually living at the place where she's working, it's actually adding more debt, because, you know, they're saying, oh, we're paying for your food, you're living with us, and it seems like the cycle that never really gets broken. And it's just exploitation, really. These children are taken away, and they're thinking, okay, well, I'll work until my family can pay off the money. And in Amal's case, she thought that'd be a month, and then that month turned into so much longer, and eventually she realized, I'm never going to leave. Like, this is how it is. This is the system. This is just how it is. It's not okay, but no one's doing anything about it until she decided, okay, I'll be the one to do something about it. So Iqbal was in a very similar situation, and I think it said that he was able to leave. I mean, they weren't going to live in the factory, so he went to work in the factory during the day and then went home at night. So he would go to the factory in the morning and come home at night. And so then eventually the loan, it was called Peshki, which Peshki is the word Urdu, I think it is in Pakistan. Forgive me if I said the wrong language. Peshki is the Urdu word that kind of means the loans that hold children in these indentured servitudes. And so Iqbal's story is about how they outlawed it in that particular town. And so he went and he told the other children in the factory who were working with him. And then he went on from there to try to speak all over Pakistan and say, this isn't okay what they're doing to you. You're allowed to be free. And he actually ended up being shot and killed in Pakistan. And it says actually in the book that there's still a lot of mystery around his death, so no one's really quite sure who it was or what exactly happened. But he was shot like Malala, but he unfortunately died while Malala survived. And if I can, I'm going to adjust this just slightly, because I did want to mention the pictures in Iqbal and Malala. So on the cover, Malala's got this little kite on hers, and Iqbal has his little kite down here. He's actually taking it upon himself to weave his kite into the rugs that he's being forced to create. And actually on the very first page of Iqbal's story, he actually has his own kite, but then when he goes to the rug factory, he's not allowed to bring it because he's essentially, not allowed to be a child anymore. And so I noticed the kite first in Iqbal's story, which I read after Malala. So then I went back into Malala's story and kind of really looked at the pictures. And so Iqbal kind of starts weaving his kite pattern into the rugs. And then there are other instances in his story where his kite can kind of be seen. Actually, and I really like this picture. In this one up above the mountains, you can kind of see both. This one is Malala's kite, and that one is Iqbal's, because their stories kind of meet in the middle of the book. And so then this is the scene where everyone realizes that he's been shot riding his bike, and so his kite is over here, and then at his funeral, his kite is there again. And so this spread in the middle of the book has Iqbal holding his kite that kind of connects to Malala, and if you flip it and you start to go back, there's Malala and her kite, and then her story is back through here. And so I first noticed the kite in Iqbal's story, like I said, and so I went back and kind of looked for it in Malala's, and you can actually kind of see and hers, there's a kite in most of the illustrations, kind of representative. Actually, I think hers is almost in every single one of the illustrations in her story. There's one up there and up there. And I might be missing some greater symbolism, because just to me, I was like, okay, well, that was the kite, and that's just a way to connect the two stories. There's another kite in that one. But I kind of figured it's a way of representing both of them. You know, when they're burning down the school right there. It's a way of representing both of them and their bravery, to kind of have this connecting factor. And then there again when she was in the hospital and when she's speaking out. So I found the illustrations to be very beautiful and meaningful. And again, like I said, I could very much be missing something, but that's at least how I took it. It was kind of representative of these two children who spoke out to create change in their countries, and kind of how their situation was slightly similar in that fact that they were speaking out for their countries, for change in their countries. Even though, you know, Malala was fighting for the right to go to school and have an education, whereas Iqbal was just fighting for his freedom. So that was that book. And the book that I decided to find for a text set, for a corresponding text, is this one, Rainbow Weaver. And it's about a girl in the mountains of Guatemala. And so the people there are descendants of the Mayans. And so weaving is a very traditional kind of Mayan thing that they would do. And she wants to be a weaver. All of the women in her family were weavers. But they don't have enough money because poverty greatly affects Guatemala. And they didn't have enough money to get her extra thread, because the thread that they used, her mother had to weave into fabrics to sell at the markets to get her school and education. And so the little girl's name, Iqbal. And so she ends up finding different materials that she thinks that she could weave with. And so she tries with grass, and then she tries with sheep's wool. And eventually she finds all of these plastic bags that have been littered around their village. And it's just, people just throw them away. People take the stuff that they get from the market out of them and throw them away. And so she ends up tearing them into pieces and finds out that they actually, when they're cleaned up, they can weave this beautiful fabric-like material. And so she ends up actually cleaning up the environment around her as a way to create these fabric weavings. And that's kind of a small change, but that's still something that, you know, you could show students to do, at least, and that was just in her village. But, you know, not as big as, you know, Amal getting her freedom from indentured servitude, or Malala fighting for her right for an education, or Iqbal fighting for his freedom from indentured servitude. But she's, you know, still affecting change, and kind of like on a more environmental scale, but that's still something that you can show kids to do. And so that's why I kind of wanted to share Rainbow Weaver this week, even though it wasn't one of the required texts that I read. I thought it related very well to both Amal Unbound and Malala Iqbal. And yeah, I think that's just about it for this week. All great books. Amal Unbound had some beautiful quotes in it about reading that I think will forever change my view on reading. And yeah, thanks guys.